When LeBron passes up Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in points, and he will this year, will that make him the greatest player ever? Okay. An interesting question. I think the greatest player is Michael Jordan.
LeBron doesn't have that gene.
Hold on. You said LeBron James the greatest player ever?
Ever.
What about Michael and Kobe? So you just gonna pass Kobe up like that?
I'm gonna pass Kobe up. I'm gonna look at Michael. I'm gonna look at the. I'm gonna look at.
I knew it. Patron America.
Yo.
Patron America.
Kobe Bryant couldn't fill, or Michael Jordan fill LeBron's shoes. The impact that he's had with different teammates, different organizations.
Would you be mad at me if I just walked off the show?
You can't leave.
The air in Madison Square Garden was still cold when the story went nuclear. The Lakers had just been roasted by the Knicks, 112-100, a loss that on paper looked like one night's bad result, but in reality became the flashpoint for a much nastier conversation. By the time the final horn faded, social feeds were already looping the moment everyone would be talking about for days. Shaquille O'Neal, towering and furious, apparently intercepting LeBron James in the tunnel and unloading on him for comments the elder legend took as a direct disrespect to Michael Jordan and the way the league used to be. This wasn't a TV soundbite or a late-night diss. It felt raw, personal, and old-school violent in the best possible sense, an era yelling back at a new one. Let's set the scene so this isn't just overheated rumor mill. This wasn't some staged TV moment. Reporters and fans on site say Shaq was waiting in the tunnel after the loss, blocking LeBron's path like a man who'd come to settle something more than a scoreboard. LeBron had spent the week explaining on a podcast why the modern game is different, even arguing that calf injuries are the new high ankle sprain because of how the sport has evolved, and those words landed poorly with the old school guard. That podcast clip circulated fast. It framed the debate and provided Shaq with the opening he wanted.
I'm gonna say one thing to you, and Max, I don't know the numbers like you do. Michael Jordan is what in the finals? 6 and what?
Oh.
And what is LeBron in the finals? That's all I gotta say.
Shaq, how many games?
Here's the part nobody is talking about. This isn't about one bad quote. It's about context, history, and what these two icons represent. Shaq isn't enraged because LeBron prefers social media or because he's candid about load management. Shaq is angry because he perceives LeBron's words as a tiny erasure of the brutality that forged the league Shaq dominated. A dismissal of the fights, the elbows, the trash talk that made legends terrifying. For Shaq, Jordan wasn't just a player with unmatched stats. MJ symbolized a competitive posture that left opponents humiliated and cowed. To imply the past was softer or the present inevitably tougher, and to equate endurance with greater difficulty felt to Shaq like revisionist history. In his eyes, that isn't analysis, it's disrespect wrapped in convenience. Let's break down the quotes and the receipts, because when you strip away the theatrics, the argument turns into a debate about brute force versus adaptation. LeBron's point on the podcast was straightforward. The game has changed, spacing and pace are different, and certain soft tissue injuries like calves are now critical concerns in a game that's more sprint-oriented. That's an argument grounded in sports medicine and analytics, and it has merit on paper. But Shaq and a host of former players hear something else. They hear an attempt to recast the narrative of toughness in a way that, intentionally or not, diminishes the eras that came before. Shaq's counter is equally simple. Fear used to be a currency you couldn't buy back with longevity. Jordan's opponents were terrified. Kobe's rivals feared the stare. Shaq argues LeBron has never provoked that same visceral dread in opponents, and that's not a shot about trophies, it's a critique of aura and psychological dominance.
LeBron is about to do something that hasn't been done in a long time, and I think he will move his name up there. But for me, it's always Dr. J and Michael Jordan, Magic and those guys.
This is where it gets dangerous for LeBron. The narrative is no longer only on podcasts or in columnist power rankings. It's in locker rooms and barbershops where legends hand down lore to the next generation. When Shaq publicly suggests the modern star shows up more as an entertainer, doing choreographed pregame routines and courting brand moments, that's a direct hit to credibility among the players who remember getting toughened by the league. Those are the same players who will tell their kids which guys they'd be terrified to guard at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. If the tape in the tunnel shows Shaq confronting LeBron the way the clips suggest, that moment will echo louder with teammates and opponents than any morning after press conference. Now let's look at the stats and historical context, because Shaq invokes history for a reason. He reminds fans that the game used to tolerate a level of physicality that today's rulebook simply forbids. Hand-checking, flagrant fouls with lighter consequences, and a culture that rewarded intimidation are not just nostalgia, they shaped how players practiced, played through pain, and built careers. Shaq's argument is that comparing eras by counting games doesn't account for the daily physical toll that once existed, the kind that made careers shorter but peaks more savage. On the flip side, LeBron's defenders point to his adaptability. He has changed his body, his diet, and his game to thrive as the league changed, compiling longevity few can match. Both sides are right about something. The league is different, and greatness can be measured in more than one way. But Shaq's emotional core is this: if you publicly claim the modern era is the tougher one, you're obliging yourself to honor the men who survived the old one.
When I look at LeBron, he's not what Michael was as a player. He's not even what Kobe Bryant was as a player. So when you talk about trying to compare Michael's instinct, his ability to take over games, his ability to want to have that last shot.
And demoralize you.
And, yes.
And scare the living hell out of you.
LeBron doesn't have that gene.
This is where young players usually make a mistake. They hear the celebrity noise and confuse it for toughness. Shaq's rant, whether in the tunnel or on live TV, is aimed at a culture that prizes branding sometimes more than bone-deep competitiveness. He sees a world where guys can be icons on Instagram and still be labeled the toughest, and he hates the dilution. That's not to say young players today don't train harder, practice smarter, or value their longevity. Of course they do. But the meaningful difference Shaq is railing against is psychological, the dread factor, the late-night phone calls teammates make to say, watch out for this guy because he will wreck your soul. In Shaq's lexicon, LeBron's aura, for all his physical gifts and numbers, never produced that same wide-eyed fear. That's the insult that cut through the tunnel and brought everyone to the edge. So what happens next? This escalates beyond ego and into legacy. Shaq calling out LeBron becomes fuel for the old guard versus new guard debate. Do we crown a GOAT based on peak terror and clutch domination, or on unparalleled adaptability and career accumulation? Shaq's position pushes public memory towards the former. LeBron's defenders will double down on the latter. The stakes are the Hall of Fame narratives, documentary framing, and history books. If the tunnel incident, viral clips included, convinces a critical mass that LeBron's rhetoric was disrespectful, Shaq's counterpunch will shape future textbooks, not only what LeBron did, but how he was perceived by the men who built the league. That's the kind of damage that outlives a single season. Here's the part nobody is talking about: the human cost and the theater of it all. Publicly, LeBron is a global icon with sponsors, influence, and thousands of headlines a year. Privately, walking into a core conversation with Shaq, a man whose Lakers run remains one of the seismic achievements in NBA history, means accepting a history lesson that can be brutal. If you're LeBron and you've been told for years that you reshaped the league and elevated player power, being stopped in a tunnel by Shaq and told that you've disrespected the legends is a moment of existential chill. It's not just about the soundbite, it's about whether the younger star wants to be liked or feared. Shaq's grievances aren't only with LeBron's words, they're with a cultural shift that reorganizes what the league respects. That's why the tunnel incident matters, not because it was violent, but because it publicly symbolized a generational judgment.
An interesting question. I think the greatest player is Michael Jordan. That's what I think.
Now to the closing bell. What do you want to believe? Do you side with Shaq's visceral, muscle, and fear definition of greatness, the one where legends made opponents cower and refuse to beg for respect? Or do you accept LeBron's differently framed mastery, where longevity, adaptation, and cultural leverage define the modern icon? There's no neutral answer here.
If you pick Shaq, you argue that dignity, intimidation, and a certain old-school brutality are the only metrics that truly matter. If you pick LeBron, you argue that the game evolved, and the players who understand the new map are the ones who should be celebrated. Either way, this tunnel clip just pried open a debate that will decide how this era remembers its titans. So pick a lane and bring receipts. Show the plays where Jordan made opponents miserable, or show the career accumulation that LeBron orchestrated across franchises. Cite the podcast clip where LeBron reframed injuries and then contrasted with Shaq's raw response. Argue with film, not with feelings, because one thing is certain, this is no longer a sideshow. Shaq's call-out has turned into a generational referendum. The Lakers will play again, stats will be tallied, and history will keep its ledger. But the memory of a tunnel standoff and a legend pulling no punches, that doesn't fade fast. Which side are you on? Team fear or team mastery? Argue like the Hall of Fame depends on it, because in the court of public opinion, it just might.